the first thing he asked me was, "Are you a sinner?" I said, "Of course." Like, who isn't a sinner? And he had a big old smile on his face. It was weird, bro. He was like, "Are you a sinner?" You know, and I'm just like, "Yeah." And then I'm looking at this dude, and I felt a little disrespected because I'm all, at that time I was bald and still tatted down, and he's this dude with the fresh cut and suit and all that, and I'm like thinking, man, yeah, you may not have sinned like me, but whatever. But anyway, so he told me, that how do you know that you're a sinner? And I'm like, I mean, if you do bad things, right, doesn't that constitute as sin? And he said, not so. And I was like, what? And I'm like, okay, now show me the paperwork, right?
Yeah.
Through the Bible or whatever. Like,
yeah.
So he showed me that he explained that sin is not what we think it is. We think like backsliding, we think lusting and stuff like that is sin. But he said those are just the symptoms of sin, right? So he was saying that sin was inherited to us through Adam. Yeah. That's what he was saying. So he's like, if you believe that the world started with, Adam and Eve, then just like you, he said, you're Chinese, right? So you didn't choose to be Chinese. You were born that way. Your father was Chinese, his father, et cetera, et cetera. It was inherited. So he said, likewise, you were born a sinner, and that's why you do these things. It's not because you do these things, you become a sinner. And that's what he was expressing to me, So for the first time, I was able to see, like, man, okay, so I'm a sinner, but by birth, not just because I did those things. And then he used the analogy of an apple tree. He's like, if you plant the seeds in the ground, and if you water the apple tree, and then after a couple of years, it's going to only produce what kind of fruits? I said, apples. And then he said, let's say the apple tree tries as hard as somehow, can it produce mangoes? No. Can it produce oranges? No. Well, you're the seed of sin. So, yeah, when you were a baby, you didn't see your sin. You're all cute and whatever. But as you grew older, you fell into that lifestyle, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, that's true. And then he was like, you're a person who you're just being normal. Like, and he was talking about just all these analogies, and he was saying that his son also, he never taught him how to lie. He never taught him how to steal. His kid at the time was like 4 or 5 years old. He's like, he's a professional liar. He's a professional stealer. Who taught him that?
Yeah.
And he's like, he's stubborn, he's selfish, all that. And he's like, did your parents ever teach you when you were born to breathe? No. Did they teach you to eat? No, you just go and you looking for the boob, you know what I mean? For the nipple, naturally. But then why did they teach you to be good? And I thought about it. Oh, he's like, because you don't have any good inside of you. Like, your good is your own standard of good. He's like, Hitler probably thinks he's a good person too. So these rapists and child molesters, I'm sorry to say, probably think they have a little bit of good in them too. Yeah, to our standards.
Justifying their evil.
Exactly. Yeah. He said, but if you measure your standard in front of God, everybody falls short. And that was the first time.
Let's go, baby. Woo! Damn. Yeah. Shit, if that wasn't a gem, I don't know what is right now, dog. So you guys go ahead and pick that shit up, dog. Put it in your pocket, dog, and take it home and share it with somebody, dog.
Amen.
Yeah, dog. Amen to that, brother. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that conversation sounds like you remember basically word for word, bro. Mm-hmm. It changed your life.
100%. Because through that, he was able to tell me that, there's a reason why Jesus died for you. And I'm like, oh, here comes the Jesus talk, like who is this dude? I don't even care about him and this and that. But he said, he made it like, he used the analogy of a debt. If you have $10,000 and I pay your $10,000 debt, right? And I tell you, yeah, you can go to the bank and get a loan now. You can start your credit, whatever. But you don't believe me. You'll never go to that bank and get it, right? So he said, likewise, Jesus died for everybody. Everybody's righteous. Everybody was made holy because he didn't fail on the cross. He said he died and he washed all of our sins, past, present, and future sins. But if you don't know it, or you don't believe it, or you don't care, it doesn't become yours, So he's like, is there anything that you can do right now to wash away your previous sins? And I was like, I thought about it, and I'm like, no, there's not. I mean, I can try to live better now, but I'm always going to backslide because, I'm a sinner. I'm always going to mess up somehow. But he said that's why God didn't want didn't leave the responsibility for you to take care of your sins. He left it to Jesus, who took care of everything, and he took care of it. And then he said, so when you go in front of God, you're righteous, actually, no matter what you did, you know? And so I was like, what the heck? And for the first time, I felt like an inkling of hope inside of my heart. Like, man, I could go to heaven, you know what I'm saying, if I believe this word. But I had questions, you know? So I asked him, you know, man, Pastor, like, so that means I could do whatever I want then? Because if I'm saying that I'm righteous, right? Yeah. Then I could just smoke somebody and rob and be like, hey, I'm righteous, you know? Yeah. And he was like, he laughed, you know, and he said, don't you, he's like, don't you do whatever you want anyway? And I thought about it. He's like, because there's 613 laws in the Bible, he said, right? You have to know all 613 laws to follow them, he said. But God knows you can't follow them, because if you break one, you break them all. So he said, if you follow 612 laws and you break the 613th, you broke them all. That's just how God's standard is, he said. So you can't follow the law and do good and make your way to heaven, he said. Otherwise, he didn't have to send his son to die for you if you could do that, he said. So what you have to do is you have to realize that, he said, take Hitler, for example. Hitler sins however he wanted. He killed everybody, did whatever he wanted to do, right? And he says, take someone like a priest. The priest has tried all his life to not be a sinner, right? And at the end of the day, Hitler obviously has sin. But what about the priest? He also has sin, he said, right? So if you have sin in front of God, even if it's this little, you're going to hell. That's what he said. So he's like, that's why God is not putting it on who does a better job. It's not a business transaction. Okay, you did good, you could come up. Or you didn't do good, it's not like that. He wanted to give us grace. He made us perfect forever. And he showed me the verses, Romans 3:23, 3:24, Hebrews 10:14, 10:17. So when I seen that, I was like, man, this is crazy, you know? But I had those thoughts again, like, man, okay, but isn't this book written by man? It's like, you know, like thousands of years old, like they could have tweaked it, they could have did this and that, you know? But he expressed to me like this: if you're an imperfect person and you're trying to understand things with your imperfect mind, he's like, do you think you can truly understand something? And then I thought about it, like, no. He's like, can you perfectly understand something? And I was like, no. He's like, you know, he was getting surgery at the time. And he's like, you know, my doctor is giving me surgery, right? And he's like, this surgery, I don't tell him like, hey, what kind of knife you're using. I don't even know how to do surgery. I just accept that he's a doctor and he's going to help me. That's it. He's like, I don't try to understand it, right?
You're trying to put your faith in another man that you believe has the qualifications to take care of you because he's in that position, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he said, but what we do is we like to question God. We like to question things that we don't understand, right? He said, it's not about questioning, but accepting, right? He's like, you know, and he gave me the exam. From there, he gave me my first task. He said, how is your relationship with your father? I said, it's horrible. You know, my dad was an alcoholic. He's like, I know your story, you know. What I want you to do is go to your father and apologize to him. And when I heard that, bro, on the real, I was like, man, fuck that, bro. Like, straight up, I was like, excuse my language, but I was like, man, hell no. He's got to apologize to me. He beat me, he put my mom in ICU, messed up my brother, he did all that, right? But I thought about it, and I expressed that to him. And the pastor was like, you just have to accept what I'm saying, because let me explain to you one thing. Why do arguments continue to happen? Why do people end up fighting and stuff? Is because there's two people who think that they're right. But when one person admits their fault and they're wrong, the argument ends. And he's like, that's the reason why people are fighting. No, I'm right, you're wrong. The other person's like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, right? So he said, go and do it. So I mustered up my courage. I put my heart down, like, man, this fool don't know nothing. He's some Asian dude who's telling me this, man, I don't want to listen. But I just put that down and I was like, look, I'll give it a try. So I went over to my, you know, got my phone and called my dad and said, let's go eat, Pops. And he was shocked too, like, what do you mean? You know, like, are you okay? You on drugs or something, you know? Yeah. And we go to this restaurant and, you know, he's just sitting there all like tense and it's awkward. I don't talk to my father like that, you know? But I just broke it down. I said, you know, Pops, I'm sorry that I was a bad son. I'm sorry that I went to Y. I'm sorry I couldn't help you and Mom. I was in prison. I apologize for all of these things, sincerely. And he just started crying, bro. He started crying, and he said, "No, son, I'm a bad father. I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything that I did, and I truly do love you." And at that point, we hugged, we cried, bro. And that one word, it broke everything. It broke all of that stuff, bro. Honestly.
Bro.
And now me and my father have a great relationship. And I learned something. It's not about understanding. It's not about filtering. I'm right. But understanding that my filter is broken and I need to accept the guidance of somebody who reads the Bible, who understands God. Because he told me, you guys in prison don't like flip-flops. You guys are all about your word, right? Because he's worked in prisons too. And I said, yes. But the funny thing is, he said, if a person in prison keeps lying to you, you know he's no good. You know, you'll take care of him, whatever. But the funny thing is your heart, it changes every day. One minute you love this girl, next minute you don't love her. One minute you make a determination to do something well, next minute you just throw that away. But you trust your heart 24/7, he said. It doesn't make sense. So he started to put it in perspective that you trusting yourself, this heart that changes like the ocean, like the waves, he said, high tide, low tide, whatever. That's why you're becoming empty. And I'm like, how did he know I was empty? How did he know all of it? He knew me. Do you understand? And he showed me the verses to back it up. He's like, I don't know you, but the Bible, the word of God, knows who you are. It was written for you. So when I saw that, I was able to see inside of my heart, man, this is a mirror image to me. You know, Romans 7 says, like, for what I hate, that I do. For the things that I don't want to do, I don't do. So it's basically saying, like, I want to do something well, but I don't know how to do those things, and I don't do those things. And the things that I hate, I keep doing. And that was me. I didn't want, nobody, I don't care how much of a gangster you are, nobody wants to see their mom or their auntie or their, you know, uncles and family, like, come to prison and cry their eyes out. Like, you can't tell me that that doesn't affect you. You have a heart as a human being. And through that, you know, I didn't want to see my mom crying every single time, driving 2 hours to Ironwood, bro. Like just, you know, waiting in line and, you know, op seals being mean to them sometimes and all that because of me, you know, and she would just cry and be so exhausted, bro. Like, she's already an old lady at the time and she's driving 2 hours. And I didn't want that to keep hurting her, but I kept hurting her like that. You know what I'm saying? So I could see that my heart was flowing in the way of sin, but the pastor told me that's normal. That's who you are. You're a person who's like just gonna produce that. So it's all good. Whereas other people were telling me, you need to change. Stop backsliding. Stop being a sinner. And then he told me, you know, when people tell you stop sinning, it's really funny. It's like saying stop being hungry. It's part of you. How can you ever stop that? That's what he said. So I was able to see, man, like, God, you made me righteous already. You made me holy and perfect. Because that's what God was saying, right? Not because I did well, not because I pray well or tithe well or change my life, but he already made me perfect. But Satan, through the thoughts that you're talking about, continuously deceived me. Man, you ain't nothing, bro. You're just a Wa-Ching gang member, and you should live this way. And you're going to die anyway, so fuck it. Live your life to the fullest. Do whatever you want to do. And don't worry about nothing else. And that's what I was feeling. So I was able to see, like, man, I'm righteous, I'm holy, right? Not because I did well, but because of God. And that word gave me hope. You know, it's been like, 12 years. It's been so many years that I have not even did drugs. I haven't been back to the pen. I haven't relapsed. I haven't done any of those things, right? And now I'm married. I have a family. I have a kid. When I look at myself, like, how can I live this life? But nothing, like I said, anger management, counseling, none of those things rehabilitated me. Nothing could get rid of that emptiness that I'm going to go to hell and this is just my life, this up and down life that it's like so depressing. But the one thing that changed me was that word, which said, you're righteous. Hebrews 10:14 says, for by one offering we are perfected forever, them that are sanctified. So he said one offering, which is Jesus Christ, perfected, which is in past tense, meaning already made perfect. And then it says forever, which means eternally, right? So if we're perfect forever in front of God because Jesus didn't fail, then how can I say I'm a sinner? That's like slapping him in the face. Yeah, I backslide all the time. But don't you think God knows that? He knows how we're going to be. He knows how we are as human beings. And he loves us. That's why he's given us these, he wants us to come to that conclusion that we can't do it ourselves. And that's what like no matter what I did, I couldn't get myself out of that slump. So what got me out of it was that word, bro. And yeah, people say, oh, it's written, thousands of years ago. Oh, these are white people. And like all that I drown out because the word, no matter what, it never changes. Like if I go and commit a sin and I look at the word 100 days from now, it'll still be the same. It'll still say that we're perfected forever because that's God's heart. He doesn't flip-flop.
God damn it, dog. Damn, dog. Woo! Damn, dog. I gotta take a step back real quick, Mama G. Man, dog. Ah, shit, dog. We in church right now, dog. You can't play that shit, dog. That shit hit the motherfucking soul, dog. I swear to God, dog. I almost motherfucking, you hit me, dog. You got me, dog.